It is our general and thoughtfully considered view that the said pronouncements and directives have been issued by the Director of PSRA unilaterally without any legal basis and are only meant to create an unwarranted disruption to the provision of private security services in the country. If urgent remedial measures are not undertaken, the private security industry in Kenya will plunge into untold chaos and disorder. By a letter dated January 29, 2024 and titled Legal Commitment to Pay Government Set Minimum Wage for Private Security Officers as per legal notice number PSRA/005/2/2023, the CEO and Director of the Private Security Regulatory Authority issued all private security companies with a 7 days notice to submit to his office a duly signed legal commitment to pay government set minimum wage for private security officers as per legal notice PSRA 005/2023, herein after referred to as the legal commitment. The commitment stipulates that private security companies should pay all security officers a basic minimum wage of 30,000 for those operating within Nairobi metropolitan area and 27,183 for those operating outside the Nairobi metropolitan area. The legal commitment is drafted as binding commitment in the manner of a sworn declaration to be made by directors of the private security companies before commissioners for oaths. The content of the director's letter has been the subject of news and articles published by various leading media houses in Kenya for the last few days, reporting that there is an expected pay rise for the private security officer. The news has been reported in a manner that would seem to paint a picture of a regular, lawful and consultative process preceding the director's directive, which is not the case. It is imperative to note that from the onset, that no such legal notice has ever been published in the Kenya Gazette as asserted by the Director, PSRA, or at all. Most importantly, any Gazette notice as may be published in the Kenya Gazette regarding matters of remuneration of any cadre of employees is a matter reserved for the Cabinet Secretary responsible for labor matters, and more particularly as provided for under the Labor Institutions Act, Section 46. Accordingly, only the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection is empowered by law to publish wages orders setting out minimum terms of conditions of employment, and only through the Kenya Gazette. Presently, legal notice number 125 of 2022 is operational, and it sets the minimum pay for day security officers at 15,201.65 and Kenya shilling 16,959 for nighttime officers. Therefore, the so-called legal notice number PSRA 005/2023, as it may be asserted to exist by the Director of PSRA and in whatever form, if any, will be one that is without legal basis, and in any event, it is one that was created and published through a process not known to the laws of Kenya. Even so, as the Director of PSRA continues to rely upon the impunged legal notice and now threatens to subject non-compliant private security companies to statutory review of their registration statutes under Section 32 of the Private Security Regulatory Act number 13 of 2016 without any lawful basis. It is worth noting that whereas Section 32 of the Act provides for cancellation of a company's operating license by the Private Security Regulatory Authority, it does not anticipate that cancellation of a company's license will be entertained or undertaken on the basis of matters concerning minimum terms of conditions of employment, and therefore the Director of PSRA would have no basis to pursue such a draconian step under any circumstances. Additionally, there exists no regulations under the Act that will be utilized by the authority in the discharge of its mandate, insofar as Section 9 of the Act empowers the authority to set standards and ensure compliance with minimum wage requirements for the officers. It will be recalled that following the enactment of the Private Security Act number 13 of 2016, the Act, the then Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, gazetted the Private Security General Regulations 2019, called the Regulations, on July 5, 2019. They came into effect on July 5, 2019, but were later annulled by the National Assembly on November 19, 2019, upon adoption of the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation recommending the annulment of the Private Security General Regulations 2019. As of today, no regulations have since been enacted under the Private Security Regulation Act, as by law provided, and most of the pronouncements made by the directives of the Director of the Private Security Regulatory Authority from time to time are issued in excess and or without jurisdiction. In conclusion, regarding the directive and threats contained in the Director's letter dated January 29, 2024, we are of the considered opinion that the directive and threat to cancel our members' licenses for non-compliance is illegal, is outrageous, and a nullity in law. The letter and its entire contents are untenable, are unreasonable, and violate the legitimate expectations of our members. Section 18 of the Act provides that the Director shall be responsible to the Board for the day-to-day operations of the authority. We are aware that though the Board is supposed to meet at least 4 times in every financial year, there has been no meeting held in the last 3 years. Additionally, quorum for the conduct of business of the Board shall be half of the members at any given time for a resolution to be passed. The Act provides that PSRA is to be governed through a Board. As matters stand today, the PSRA Board is not constituted, and there is no board as envisaged under Section 11 of the Act. It is not known upon what premise the current Director continues to issue far-reaching pronouncements on letterheads of the Office of the President from time to time, whereas no board has sat to discuss and resolve to pass any of the directives emanating from the authority, including the latest one on minimum wage. If Mr. Makanga could continue.
Additionally, the substance and form of legal commitment that the Director PSRA now demands execution of by the private security companies is one that originates from his own mind and desk. This imputed legal commitment is therefore not rationally connected to or made with authority of the Board as envisaged under the Act. Simply put, the Director PSRA is acting on a frolic of his own, issuing letters and directives on letterheads of Office of the President of the Republic of Kenya rather than of PSRA, which is a corporate body with perpetual succession and common seal. In our view, the use of the Office of the President letterheads pairing the coat of arms of Kenya instead of PSRA letterheads is only meant to intimidate private security players and who would be recipients of the Director's letters. Alternatively, it does not exempt him from observing the rule of law, nor does it justify his illegalities. We are also aware that Section 18 of the same Act provides that a Director of PSRA shall serve the authority for a term of 3 years and shall be eligible subject to satisfactory performance of his or her functions for reappointment for another term. The current Director of PSRA was appointed on 1st July 2018, but as it is not very clear how he was reappointed for a second term, and it would be imperative that the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Ministry of Interior and National Administration reins on it, the Director, as the consequential effects of Azul's acts and the threats, if not addressed and left to go on unabated, portends joblessness in the private security sector, which supports over 2.5 million employees. The import of the Director's letter and threats contained in it sets the stage for antagonism between the private security players and the PSRA. For avoidance of doubt, we are not against the regulations of the private security industry, but the government must also be cognizant of the contribution that the private security companies make towards job creation and maintaining peace and order all over the whole country. Whereas the enactment of the Private Security Act number 13 of 2016 was celebrated as a game changer in the sector that had been long time left self-regulated, and though we reserve our right to institute any appropriate legal action in the course of law to safeguard our members' interests, we urge the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior and National Administration to set up urgently and remedy the situation, and in that regard to quash the director's letter and directive on minimum wage, which has been nullified by the Ministry of Labour. We present that the plea to the Cabinet Secretary, as it is better to avoid unnecessary litigations in court on a matter that can easily intervene and calm the troubled waters. In the same vein, we are also desirous of the seeing that the PSRA board and other organs created under the Act are fully operational and in tandem with the law. More specifically, we implore the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior and National Administration to take urgent and appropriate steps to ensure that PSRA board is fully constituted as by law provided, and that the necessary steps are taken to enact regulations that will operationalize the functions of PSRA and its board in a manner that gives confidence to investors and stakeholders in the private security industry. We are also concerned that the fact that our security officers desire to earn better income in the ever-changing economic times. But even as we strive to provide better remuneration, the same can only be a product of enabling environment for both the employers and the employees on one hand, and the clients who are the consumers of this service. Alternatively, the government bears the great responsibility in fostering an enabling environment that spurs economic growth, and we continue to be optimistic of better days ahead. But we must all work together to improve the circumstances of all the stakeholders, who include investors, employers, employees, and the clients who are involved in this industry. As we finish, we hope that the Ministry of Interior and National Coordination, the Cabinet Secretary of Interior and the National Administration will heed to our call and rein on the Director PSRA and address our concerns in a timely manner, so that we restore confidence and order in the private security industry and avoid imminent crisis. Has over 100 companies that employ more than 20,000, not even more than 50,000 security officers. The same applies to Protective and Safety Association of Kenya. So, in the actual sense, we are the biggest associations that provide jobs to our staff. Just to avoid enough down, there are things that we need to clarify. Number one, we love our staff. There's that notion that people have created that we as employers, we don't love our guards. We really love our guards, because they are the guys who are on the ground. They are our foot soldiers. So somebody cannot come and allege that our staff, we have no welfare for them. Secondly, with the issue of if implemented, we are going to lose 700 jobs. 7,000 jobs. 700,000 jobs. Now, if these guys are going to lose 700,000 jobs, my colleague will tell you very clearly that these guys know security. They are going to become what? A security risk in the security industry. We are concerned that a few players have come up with some rules, and they are saying that guards should be able to allow to search. You saw it on media. And we are saying this is just a far-reaching regulation that has not been brought to us as employers. We need to discuss these issues through public participation and see what is the best way forward. And lastly, we are saying anything coming in the industry must be subjected to public participation, and us as employers, we are involved in for the betterment of the industry. Thank you. My colleague can comment from there.
Biggest buyer of this service is government. So if there is goodwill from government, starting from National Treasury with the budgets, and they say there's enough money to pay for this service, then the Wages Council and the Cabinet Secretary will sit, they will make recommendations, and we have no problem. Remember, we are also profit-making. I mean, which business wants to earn and just be a conveyor belt of paying the money? And one other thing you must highlight is, this is a triangle. Fazul is talking as if that authority and workers live in the island, and employers mean nothing. Who will PSRA regulate if you drove employers out of business? And who would these workers, 2.5 million of them today, who would employ them if you drove us out of the market? So it's a triangle that no one can ignore. You cannot speak about this sector and say the employer does not matter. Yes.
Just to add on that,
He has a last question.
We've had meetings. We met Fazul. When Fazul was appointed, we met, he can tell you, we met Fazul. All associations met Fazul. We told you very clearly the industry has got 3 players. The guards, who are the employees, the employers, who are the associations, and then we've got the guys who give us the job. So we told him, can you make sure that you meet each of them and understand how the industry runs? I can assure you, today as we are sitting here, we've not been able to meet him and discuss these issues.
You know, you should see 3 things that we have really highlighted today. We don't even have a problem being regulated. In fact, can we tell you that long before we were regulating ourselves, it took us to go to Naivasha more than for 2 years with MPs to lobby to create a bill that turned out into the act. We went to Naivasha not less than 10 times. So we wanted to be regulated. The problem we are having today is not about us being regulated. We are saying there is a fellow called Fazul who is operating like the law is him and the law is, and he is the law. And that is not it. It cannot be. And we have said 3 things here. 1, Fazul has no board. He should stick to operational activities only until he gets a board. In the absence of him having a board, and in the absence of the Act having regulations, the Cabinet Secretary should be busy with the Parliament to ensure regulations are approved. Public participation is a must. You'll have to listen to us. We all talk the same table. Until the regulations are approved by Parliament, until Fazul has a board, he must stop recklessness or must be stopped. And I want you to understand as well, we have no problem with the regulator. We have no problem with being regulated. We are saying, here is a guy who is going outside jurisdiction. You cannot have a parastatal whose CEO is a rogue, who wants to be the law himself. Every week we don't know which new letter he is writing. And he is writing on the emblem of the office of the president. And his first sentence is, we make reference. So if you were to respond to that letter, you are writing to the office of the president. The question is, what happened to the emblem of the authority? If you go to eCitizen, PSRA has a logo. I was in its board, the first board. I was its vice chair. I know it has a logo. I've been a chair of various other parastatals other than that one. Parastatals are also pretended by a cabinet secretary, so in ministries. I've not seen a parastatal that uses office of the president letterheads with the coat of arms. Something is wrong, and that's what we want you to highlight. Who gave Fazul authority to use letterheads of office of the president? The right to information. Even you ask him for us. What happened to his letterheads? Who gave him authority to use office of the president letterheads? When did his board meet last? Where are his minutes? And we have told the cabinet secretary, we have no problem being regulated. Push the regulations. Let Parliament invite us for public participation. When regulations are approved, we are okay. We'll operate with them. There are no regulations. So what are we talking about? There is no board. What are we talking about? And that board has 2 representatives of the employers. Did you know that in a board, the directors and the board are superior to the CEO? Why is Fazul operating like he's superior to us? Us who are his employers. Who would he regulate if we all closed shop and went home?